Ding. I'm missing the bell. Thank you, Ronnie. Good morning. All of you intrepid souls joining us here in person, and those of you joining us online. Welcome to the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. We recognize that CVUUS, that's us, for those of you who may be new, gathers on land seized from the Western Abenaki people by European colonizers. We respect the Abenaki's spiritual relationship to the land and waters of this, what we call now the Champlain Valley. We are committed to building a peaceful and more just relationship with them and to promoting knowledge about their history and culture. As members and friends of the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society, committed to the Unitarian Universalist principles, we strive to be an inclusive and welcoming community that sustains a liberal religious tradition. We aspire to be visible and active on behalf of social justice and environmental responsibility. We nurture and empower each other at all ages on our spiritual journeys, and we reach out to the larger communities of which we are a part. My name is Jason Duquette Hoffman, and I am the worship associate for today's service, which is led by our guest, Sas Carey. Sas Carey has lived in Middlebury most of her life. As a writer, Sas has spent 2 residencies at the Vermont Studio Center working on her memoir. Does a quarterly column for Ways of Seeing in the Addison Independent, has published work in Zigzag Lit Mag and the Sun, and has written Reindeer Herders in My Heart, which has been translated into Mongolian and French. As a registered nurse, teacher, and an international healer, she has worked at Porter Hospital, the Parent-Child Center, taught 2nd grade in Weybridge, and worked with teen groups in all of Addison County's high schools. As a filmmaker, she has directed 4 award-winning feature documentaries about Mongolian nomadic herders, Gobi Women's Song, Ceremony, Migration, and Transition, and 2 shorts, Steppe Herbs, Mare's Milk, and Jelly Jars, and Gobi Children's Song. Her Mongolian work is under the auspices of the nonprofit Nomadicare.org, which she founded and directs. The mission of Nomadicare is to support and preserve traditional Mongolian nomadic life through healthcare, films, and stories. We are so pleased that Sas can be with us today. If you are visiting, please sign our guest book so that we can stay connected. For those of you joining us via Zoom, please stay on to join us after the service for our virtual coffee hour. And if you haven't already done so, this is the perfect time to turn off your cell phones or any other devices that you may have, or put them into worship mode. Our service today is the product of the efforts of many people. In addition to all of the support that our worship team and staff provide, Rich Wolfson was our gatherer, organizing the elements, shepherding the contributors, and producing our show. Richard Hopkins is our videocaster today. Sound is provided via the good efforts of Alan Moore. Ronnie is our accompanist for today's service. And our flowers, of which today we have an abundance, are brought to us by Chris Murphy, Dinah Smith, Marnie Wood, and through the generosity of Mike Greenwood, who provided access to additional flowers through his CSA as we close out that season growing. A reminder that we will not sing today during our service because we are inside as part of our COVID protocols. When it comes time for our hymn, please do feel free to hum. Every day of every week, we are sustaining the work of this congregation through our connections and our commitments to each other. Beyond our weekly services here, there are many pathways to connection, which are shared through our monthly newsletter and our weekly emails. And if you are not receiving these and wish to, please email office@cvuus.org. There's a link on the website also for those of you who are joining via Zoom. Today, following the service, is our Addison County Crop Hunger Walk. So come and support this annual walk by joining, cheering on the walkers, and donating. Additionally, every second Monday of the month, we make dinner for guests at Charter House. The next meal preparation is next Monday, October 11th. And you can contact Alan Moore and back there if you'd like to help out. And now, as is our custom, come on up. I'm going to light our chalice to begin our worship service while Sas leads us in some beautiful thoughts as we open our minds to our service today.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Some I know and some are new that I'm going to meet today. What I'd like you to start thinking about is, what is it like when you have a moment that you know you're where you need to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing, and in harmony with your life's purpose? And I'd like you to take a moment to think about that. I'm going to sing a Mongolian song that's called Peaceful Nature. Namo Hanbagalin Seresan Naharni Toya Tosaladaho Narsni Minjar Lalalexo Noche Narte Hanchi Ocheladaho Ole Seleni Ayasahara Oni Setse Good Gan Aladaho Ordni Minjalalex Noche Unechi Ocheladaho.
Now Ronnie's going to play for us our hymn number 357 in your hymnal, if you choose to hum along, Gather the Spirit.
I was asked to find a story that's traditional Mongolian story. And I wrote to my friend in Virginia and said, okay, what can I use? And she sent me one, which I've used before, and so I'm happy to have it. It's about Genghis Khan's ancestors, and sometimes here we call it Genghis Khan, but they call it Genghis Khan. And his ancestor, Alun Gua, it's called Alun the Beautiful, was a clever woman and a mother of 5 children. And they were always fighting. And so one day they were sitting in a circle and she gave each one an arrow. And she said, break the arrow. And each child broke the arrow. And then she said, easily. And then she said, took 5 arrows and put them together in a bundle and handed them to one after the other and said, okay, now try. And they couldn't do it. So this is a story with a moral in Mongolian, for Mongolian children. If you stand together and are friends, you'll succeed. If you try to do something off on your own, it won't be as powerful.
So each week we split our offering with a donee selected by our donations committee. This week we are collecting for the UUA Disaster Relief Fund. The fund assists congregations and their communities with responding to the impacts of disasters ranging from weather and storm damage to COVID-19 recovery. So please share as generously as you are able. Life is full of milestones and passages which we may choose to share with one another or to hold to ourselves, unspoken but no less present. Today we have a milestone passages from Morris Earl and Lynn. We would like to share a candle of concern for our friend Mary, who was diagnosed with ALS last week. She's fairly cheerful and reminds us to number our days. Thank you. We hope that you will hold these and all of those unshared milestones and passages in your heart and offer them such care as you may. And at this time, I'd like to invite you all into a brief moment of silent meditation, reflection, or any such other contemplative state as may suit you best in this moment. And now we look forward to hearing more from our guest today, Sas Carey.
If you go back to the best moment that we were talking about and that you were thinking about a few minutes ago, I'd like to bring my experiences with Mongolia forward. And first, I'm going to give one that's, you wonder why it could be the best moment of my life when you hear it. But this is from my book about Mongolia. Our team is ready to meet the horses after an hour ride in the foregone Russian Jeep through green rolling steppe to Harma. That's the name of the town. Well, it's not really a town, but we arrive in a field with a log building, dung piles, and hitching posts. It's early August. The weather is sunny. I smell wormwood and horse manure and the pungent aroma of horse sweat. The horses have already galloped for 5 hours from Saganor. This is it, I'm saying inside. I try to act like this is no big deal. I'm about to get on a horse and ride for 8 hours with a broken foot. Well, I'm shaking to think of it. 20 horses are tied up, waiting. I try not to look at them. For 4 hours, we ride through the woods. Horses' hooves clunk against roots, stirrups clang against tree trunks, and trees smash into my knees as if they're out to get me. I'm not safe. I need to remember to breathe deeply. There's a gorge below the narrow trail. Branches snap in my face. The horse steps into wet ground up to his hocks. He jolts me as he pulls his feet out and sloshes along through a muddy area. He drops his head to look as we go down a steep hill and the short reins fly from my hands. I know I'm supposed to lean back. I can't reach the reins. The dirt path goes down at an angle of 45 degrees, then 45 degrees up, over a shallow river, up over boulders, and then through roaring rivers. I'm holding tightly to the metal loop on the saddle. My fingers hurt, but my goal is to stay on the horse and not die today. 4 more hours and we'll be at the settlement at Mengbolek, says Dan, cheerfully. I need to focus on staying on the horse and staying alive. Remember my goal. This is my chance to meet a 100-year-old shaman. She may not be here another year. I remind myself of my women friends. I see their faces one by one. I think about how they've always supported and loved me. I think of the Mongolian American Cultural Association, which gave me a contribution to buy and distribute vitamins. I think of our Quaker meeting holding me in the light. I picture the donors who helped me get here. I feel better. Just keep going. Now, you may wonder why that would be the best moment of my life. I don't think it was at that time, but when I look back on it, a lot of what happened when I went to Mongolia and why I went to Mongolia was about using all of myself, using everything. And when I'm there, I feel like I'm using everything of me. All of the early experiences in my life, like I was I was always pushing limits as a child. And I just decided when I was 12 that I wanted to be an AFS student and go somewhere to study in another part of the world. I was always interested in other people, partly because I knew I could get away with things that I couldn't get away with in my culture in Connecticut. And for example, I remember the first time I decided it might be really interesting to be in another culture was in the girls' bathroom in high school. I was in 8th grade, and Zareen Patel from Pakistan was putting this coal on her eyes. And my mother always told me anybody who wore makeup was not my kind of person. Like, I was not that kind of person to wear makeup. And there I watched her do it. And she was the AFS student from Pakistan. And it just got me thinking, like, well, maybe there are different rules, different places. And so that sort of set me off as a rebel, like, oh, well, I need to find out about that. Then there were some really amazing moments that shifted things for me. One of them was, I went to a psychic when I was getting divorced, and to ask if I should have the kids or my husband should have the kids, because he was a very good father. And the first thing she said to me was, "You're a healer." I really didn't know what a healer was. And she said, "You need to start an Edgar Cayce study group, and you need to learn how to be a healer." So I spent a year just trying to find and start an Edgar Cayce study group. And there was a guide that said, "Search for God," which, we Quakers don't use that word either, so don't worry. I had to learn how to translate those words and so I started doing that. Then I was working as a women's health center in Rutland. And it came to me that if I was going to be a healer, I had to learn about the physical body. So I went to UVM and became a nurse. And after that, I did a few things which we talked about, Jason already mentioned. Then the next amazing thing that happened was I was doing healing on a woman from Lincoln, and she held up this book and she said, it was called Encounters with Chi by David Eisenberg. And she said, "This is about you. You need to go to China." And I said, "Oh, I've read that book." And I thought, but I can't go to China. I don't have any money. So part of just always listening to the spirit and doing what I'm told has been really not having money in my life. And so she said, "How many years of trade would it be for me to give you the money, and I'll give you, and you give me healing sessions?" So I traded 7 years of healing sessions. And I went with the American Holistic Nurses Association to China. I had never, ever, ever wanted to go to Mongolia or thought about Mongolia. The only thing I ever thought of Mongolia was when my mother would say something like, "Oh, she loves him so much, she would go to outer Mongolia." That's my view of Mongolia. But the tour went 2 weeks in China and 1 week in Mongolia. And when I stepped on the ground in Mongolia, I felt this vibration come up from the earth, just up through my body, like grabbing me, I guess I could say. And I knew that I was in that place where I was supposed to be at the moment that I was supposed to be there. But I still had no answers. So I didn't know exactly what that meant or what I was supposed to do about it or anything. As part of that tour, we did a lot of different things. Some were kind of wild, like dancing in bars and going to the festival of the 3 manly sports called Nadam, that is horse racing and wrestling and archery. And just being out in the steppes, that land, the smell of the land, everything, it's just amazing. And then I met this doctor named Dr. Bolsahin, who was giving us a tour of the traditional Mongolian medicine institute. And all along I had been trying to harmonize or integrate traditional medicine, being a nurse, Western medicine, and being a healer. And it just seemed to really fit there. In fact, when I went in his office, he had a computer. I hadn't seen any other computer in Mongolia then. That was in 1994. And next to the computer was Buddha Sutras, opened up to the pages. And he told us that what he was doing was figuring out what ingredients were used most often in traditional Tibetan and Mongolian medicine and putting it onto his computer. And I thought, well, if this isn't a picture of what I've been looking for, that's really it right there. A sutra and a computer right next to each other. So then he was giving us a tour, and out of my mouth came these words, and I'm a Quaker, so it just, my heart started pounding like it does in Quaker meeting, and out came these words: would you take an American disciple? I mean, I don't talk like that really, you know, that's really, anyway. And he said, yes. So it took a whole year to get back to him and to study. We went for, Kathleen Scacciafero from Bristol and I went for 3.5 months, and we studied, the two of us with him, and the first Westerners to be trained in traditional Mongolian medicine. The amazing thing about it when you're doing it this way with a leading is you may not know how you're going to do something. You probably don't. And you don't know why you're going to do it. You just know you're supposed to do it. So we went. I remember sitting in that class with the three of us and just really not getting it. I mean, we were already trained as nurses, but I couldn't understand what he was talking about. It was because it was such, I always, before I went, I thought, oh, just integrate a little this, a little that into Western medicine. No, it's a completely different system. And ours is over here. And you can't just take a little piece of that and put it into ours. So after about 5 years of thinking about it, after I got home, this is the way I describe it. Mongolian medicine and Eastern medicine targets the system and assumes that the symptom will heal. And Western medicine targets the symptom and assumes the system will heal. Do you get what I mean? Like if you hurt your thumb, we would do something about that. You know, here, we'd put a bandage on it. We'd probably give some medicine so it won't, we'd put ice on it, all those kind of things. But in Eastern medicine, they would also give you something to balance your whole body. Like when somebody came in with a broken arm to my teacher, he said, go get an x-ray and come back. And so they would go to the Western hospital, and then they'd come back to him, and he would give them some holistic medicine that would balance the whole body. Because, you know, when you hurt your arm, you're also out of balance and you have other things going on. So that was really fascinating. But I didn't really get the specifics of it, because the way he told it, he would give every ingredient in the medicine, all natural ingredients. The first medicine he gave us was called Borholomo, and he had a whiteboard and he listed every one. There was pomegranate, cardamom, saffron, a lot of spices that we know, black salt, yak butter. I mean, just very interesting, but I couldn't really get the overview of it, of why I should know that, because it was so different. But that's part of the leading, is to just sit in the unknowing of what this is all about. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, maybe I'll get it by osmosis or something, you know. I don't know if it's really truly possible for a Westerner to get it, unless you move there and live there for 10 years or something. I think that I've seen Mongolians learn traditional medicine, and I think it's part of their cells. I think they just get it. And I mean, I can explain it to you. I can talk to you a lot about it, but it's not really mine, you know. Which reminds me of another time when Brother Stendelras came here during some of you may remember when the Dalai Lama came. Spirit and Nature conference. And I was in the front of the room, and the Dalai Lama had just at the college, and the Dalai Lama had just finished speaking, and Brother Stendhal Rast, and they were both standing this far away from me. I could have touched the Dalai Lama. And I thought, this is not my tradition. It's more my tradition now because I've been exposed to it for 27 years. But at that point, I thought, no. And I went and spoke to Brother Stendhal Rast, which felt like it had integrity. So as far as why things are happening, why you're doing it, or how you're going to do it, then I'll tell you how in relation to the movies. So as I was, how much time do I have? Oh, thank you. Just trying to figure out how I could tell stories. Okay, so about the movies, after I had studied traditional medicine in 1995, I had gone back in 97 and worked with the UN as a health consultant, health education consultant, and had gone to the Gobi Desert, and we had interviewed groups, and one of the groups was women over 30. And one of our questions was, how much water do you use in a day? And they said 5 liters, which is like 5 quarts. That's for washing, cleaning, drinking, cooking, everything. 5 liters. Just think about that. At the time, it was 1 flush of the toilet here. And now we have a little bit better situation. But so that took a few years to percolate too. And I was meditating one day and I got, you need to make a movie to show how they can do that. How can people live with 5 liters of water a day and survive? And it took me another couple of years to get there to do that. So in 2001, I went, but I didn't know who was going to help me. I didn't know who the cameraman would be, or if I was doing it. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where to do it. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't have a translator, but I still went, crazy as I am. And so I called this phone call. I had one phone. I had one phone number for a translator. And this woman answered it and she said, oh yeah, well, I speak English, but I'm already busy for that time. And she said, but you could talk to my boyfriend. I said, well, I really wanted this to be a woman's movie. He said, well, I don't think, he got on the phone, and he was from New York and an animator, a filmmaker. And he said, well, I don't think I'll get in the way with this. I'd be happy to do it, and I could use my camera. I'm here to make another movie, and I have to wait for my crew to come. So we went to the Gobi, and Joseph Spade, he knew so much about filmmaking. I knew nothing about filmmaking, and he came as the camera person. So then it was 2 nights before we were supposed to leave for the Gobi, which had been just miraculously arranged and a place for me to stay and the whole thing. I called one of my old friends who I knew from 95 in Mongolia, and asked her if she could translate. And she said, oh no, I have a job, but maybe my daughter. So her daughter was Haluna. She was 19 years old, and this amazing young woman who wore spike heels all the time, even in the countryside, even walking up a mountain with spike heels. This is an amazing person. So she came with us, and she was great. And we ended up seeing 4 births and filming one, and it became the movie Gobi Women's Song, and shows how they lived, and working with 5 different women who were nomadic. Once I said, every time they work, just take a picture, okay? And so once they came over to visit me, and I was sweeping the floor, and they said, take a picture. She's sweeping the floor. Anyway, it always became really an interactive thing, working with the women and the people and making the film. So that was I finished that film in 2005. And in 2008, I went back And then in 2013, I went back. In 2013, of the 5 women, none were nomads anymore. And that really just hit me so hard. And I said, okay, I have to make a movie about people that are still nomadic. Let me just see if I wanted to say anything else about. No, everything magically came together, like a place to stay. They built a ger for us, a yurt, and they took us, the head of the town in the Gobi, the man directors wrote down 5 names of women that we could go interview, and it was just all happened. And then, but in 2013, when I saw that they weren't nomadic anymore, then I thought, well, I really don't have so much time to get this story out and to really have people understand the way life is among these people. So already I had started working with the reindeer herders up in the northern part of Mongolia, the taiga, and I decided to make my next movie about them and to call it Migration. So it would show, which is what nomads do. And the nomadic herders in Mongolia in the north move 4 times a year. So I asked if we could move with them, and they loaned me a reindeer to ride on. And we took the 2-day ride up mountains and down mountains and around and here and up to 8,000 feet and all that stuff. And to their summer camp where it was really cold. And made the movie. And then every time I've taken the movies back to show them. And sometimes I sit in the ger, or they live in teepees or Siberian teepees or orts. And the whole community would gather around my little computer and watch the movie. And that's when I learned two of the whys of why I did this, why I was supposed to do this, which I had no clue about when I was doing. One of them was we showed the movie in their town, Saganor, with the people of the town, the sedentary people, and some of the Duha reindeer herders were down in the audience too. And when it finished, I realized that this smallest minority group in Mongolia, the Duha reindeer herders, were totally marginalized, even by their community, because their kids went to school there, but they were the poorest of the people because they didn't live on a money economy at all. And they were marginalized and had never seen the beautiful life that these people live when they're up in the mountains. So that was quite shocking to me. And I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. And another one was when I was showing it up in the taiga with the reindeer herders, and Basenho, who actually sings a song in Migration, the movie, he brought his little flip phone, red flip phone up and put it next to my computer. And I said, I'll give you a copy. He said, no, these are Tuvan songs. Our ancestors are Tuvan and the border is closed. We cannot visit them. We can't learn these songs ourselves from our ancestors. And you have them here. I need to put them on my phone so I can learn these songs myself. And I thought, okay, well, that's a little hint, a couple hints of why I'm doing it. But really, when you're guided to do something, you don't know. If you trust, you just do it. And that's how it's been, without answers, but, just trust, I guess I would say, to do it the way it's supposed to happen. And there's no other time. I mean, I love Middlebury and I've lived here such a long time, but when you're challenged, like riding that horse ride, when you're challenged with the food, I can't eat the food, I'm vegetarian and lactose intolerant. They eat meat and dairy. There's so many pieces like that. The climate is really challenging. It's 40 below in the winter, and in the Gobi it's 40 below in the winter, and in the summer it's 100 and I've been there in 110 in the Gobi doing trainings, medical trainings with people. It's really challenging, but really I always feel like I'm exactly where I need to be when I'm there. And I invite you all to listen and follow and take the challenge, because it's worth it for that feeling, that the smells and the sounds and just the feeling inside that you're here on the earth doing what you're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Ronnie's going to play for us hymn number 1028, Fire of Commitment. And again, feel free to hum along. As we go out to greet the week that is to come, I offer you this benediction from Amy Zucker Morgenstern. In every person we meet, especially those who cause us discomfort, we find an opportunity to grow, to learn, to go further along the path of transformation that is our purpose in life. Every single one is our teacher. May the next week bring you many such moments of meeting that help you become the person you want to be, and may you welcome them with joy. Thank you for joining us.